Well guys, welcome to another Mo.re.Drums video, and this one is going to be a bit different than the others I usually do, which are drum covers mostly. But today I will not be playing, I will be talking about this right here, my drum kit. Or more exactly the one that I usually play when I do the drum covers. I will be setting up another one shortly, so I thought I'll take the opportunity to just, well, show you what it is, talk about the shells, the finish, the cymbals, the drumheads, the works, just so you know what it is. So it's going to be a kit tour, so to speak. That's also the title of the video, and as you might have already seen, it is a DW kit. So I hope you enjoy it. I will do some B-roll for you guys, show you some details while I talk to the camera up front, and I will be shooting from up top as well, so you will be getting all the nooks and crannies of the kit from all angles possible. So let's get into it right now. Okay, as I already mentioned, and as the title kind of gives away, this is a DW kit. I bought it in 2005, ordered it from my favorite drum shop back then, and 7 months later, it arrived. I sold another one I had previously to that very shop, paid, well, kind of an upgrade price, and got this beautiful set right here. It is a collector series from their graphics department. So the finish is called Blue Tribal Flames. It is not the hot rod flame version, which is also out there, but the tribal flames are a bit wider and a bit thicker, and they are kind of very metallic blue with a black outline kind of hue around it. And it is all pearlescent, so also the white parts of it are kind of sparkly. They're not solid white, but a bit with, well, metal particles in it. So that's the finish. And I started off originally with a 4-piece kit, so bass drum, snare, and 2 toms. And as you can see, this expanded over the years. I started with the 22 by 18-inch kick, with the 14 by 10 rack tom. Actually, it is not a floor tom, it is not sitting on legs, and the 16 by 14 also rack tom. So I was all about putting nothing at all on the floor, or as little as possible. So I always had tom cymbal stands on the left and on the right to hold basically everything. I didn't want to use a rack, so that was my kind of way to go about it. And I opted for the vintage configuration, so basically thin maple shells and reinforcement rings on top and bottom. So basically one of the most common and iconic drum shell constructions out there. Same goes for the material. Maple is very, very basically suited for all kinds of music. I didn't want to do something particular back then because I've always been playing multiple genres and wanted something right down the middle. And it's still great, works awesome in the studio and in live application as well. It does have a lot of sustain, especially the hanging toms, the big ones, but that can be controlled, that can be kind of mitigated by other measures. So 22-18, 14 by 10, and 16 by 14 was the original configuration. The snare is back here. I'm not playing it right now. It is a 14 by 6, and it is lacquered inside, so there is a clear coating on it on the inside. I just watched a DW John Good video the other day where he explained that they only do this on the snare drums to give them more projection and more kind of resonance in comparison to the toms and bass drum, where they don't lacquer the inside to keep them less basically reflective. As you can see, I got 2 more shells that haven't been in the original kit from 2005. They were added later. I got them, I think, 3 or 4 years ago. And I always wanted to get one of these babies up front, a Woofer, which is a 22 by 8. So it's basically a bass drum in front of the bass drum. It is a, well, so to speak, acoustic subwoofer, and it basically takes the resonance from the bass drum and kind of just resonates with it, and it picks up mostly on the low end. And it has a mic inside with the Mo.re mic drum system. It is a an AKG D112, one of the most common bass drum microphones out there. It's mounted on the inside, and so I have an extra channel for basically the low end of the kick drum. And that gives me the possibility to mix with the mic that is also inside the actual kick drum, which is mounted with a Kelly Shoe kick drum mic mount, which is the Sennheiser E902. and that basically sits right in the middle on rubber straps. So it's basically unhinged from the actual bass drum, so no well, direct contact with the shell, which is good. So that's basically the low end part. The tom that I also got is a 10 by 9 inch, 10 by 8, sorry, I think it's a 10 by 8. And so 10, 14, 16 is the setup I've been playing for a couple of years now, also with other kits that I've been using, at least for the 10-inch tom and the 14. If it's a floor tom right here, the 16 is basically optional depending on how much room I have on the stage. The snare I'm playing right now is the Benny Grab by Sonor, the 2.0 signature version, the brass shell in this case. It's a 13 by 5.75 inch, and the size is quite odd. I don't know any other snare besides the Benny Grab models that are out there that have this, but it works great. It is compact, it is a bit deeper than most 13-inch snares, which usually are like 5 or 5.5 inches. So it gives it an extra oomph in the low end. And also the brass shell is quite warm, so it's not as harsh as other metal drums are. I do prefer brass or aluminum. I'm not a fan of steel, but that is entirely up to your personal taste. That's just mine. It has two rail systems inside that you can control with two dials on the outside, and they each have a dampening material attached to them. So one is basically fake sheep fur, which I use right now. You can probably see it from the top angle or from the detail shot that it is right here. And you can control very precisely how it dampens the drum head. If it's just slight, taking off a bit of sustain in the end, just like a little roll off, or if it's pressed up against it quite tightly and basically acts like a huge dampener. The other one that I don't use is a circular felt pad, which kind of is less flexible. So it's not on and off only, but there is very little in between in my opinion. So I prefer the fake sheep fur version because it's more subtle and it's easier to control. So that snare is the one I've been playing on the covers lately. I will be using another one, which you can't see right now. I will be doing a head change on that as well. So you'll be seeing the Tama one shortly, I hope. So that's basically the shells. And let's go into hardware real quick. It's all DW. I'm not what I consider a fanboy. I've just, well, always liked what the brand did. For me personally, for what I do, might be entirely different for your use case or for what you like and need. Basically, there are so many good drum brands out there. I do have other kits that I will be playing in the near future, and I do love them dearly. But DW has always been kind of the sound that I wanted to go for, and they offered what I was looking for, so I stuck with them over the years. And this kit basically was financed by a paper route, 9 months of civil service, setting money aside, plus a loan from my parents that I paid back over the years. So a lot of heart and, well, budget went into this. And as you can see, I also got basically the finish, a photo from this 14 by 10 inch tom wrapped around my right forearm, which is kind of my way of saying I will probably never sell this one. This is kind of my drum kit that I will be holding on to for as long as possible, or forever, let's see. Hardware, yeah, it's 9000 series mostly, with some exceptions. So it's, as I said, tom cymbal stands with dog mounts to attach other cymbals. It is also the closed hi-hat arm and another boom arm with a short well, boom and also the short arm down, which is easier to kind of position. So double tom stand as well, and another dog bone for this cymbal, and the stand for the right cymbal is actually the shorter one, so it doesn't have two height adjustments, just one, so you can lower it further down, which I like for the right cymbal, to have it crashable and still have the bell accessible. So I'm sitting quite high, playing quite low. I have the cymbals basically on my, well, chest height, I would say. Yeah, it's probably chest height. And I like basically having everything in front of me and underneath me, so I can reach everything easily. But as you can see with the Nico McBrain, for example, who kind of does the opposite, sits very low, plays very high. This is also just a matter of taste and also convenience, how you like it and how you were, well, kind of taught to set it up, I guess. And also what you discovered over the years just trying stuff out. So this is not set in stone, that's just my setup. The hi-hat and the kick drum pedal are not the 9000 series because they are from the MCD and MDD series, so the machined chain drive double pedal and the machined direct drive hi-hat pedal, the two-legged version because the double pedal on the bass needs a bit more space. And lastly, the snare stands, 9000 series with more flexibility in the basket to move it around more easily. It's not the lift version, so not the one that comes up automatically for heavier shells, because I don't have shells that are that heavy, so I don't need that. And one 5000 series stand over here because I don't need the flexibility for the side snare because it's always in the same place usually and doesn't really change. Throne is also 9000 series, very thick padding, very big actual seating area, so I can move back to front, front to back, just sit wherever I like, however I like, depending on what I play, how I play. So if I get really into it, I sit further to the front. If I'm just a bit more lean back, I sit more to the back, which is kind of obvious, I guess. And underneath the seat is a Fischeramps Buttklicker Mini LFE, which is basically a motor that rumbles whenever I strike the bass drum with a beater. So it actually enhances the low end that I hear through my in-ears. That is kind of to not, well, overdo it with the loudness of the mix, with the level, the volume, because, well, you only have one set of ears and most drummers have damaged ears after a couple of years if they don't protect them right. So my in-ear mix is actually not that loud. I have everything mic'd up. I will go into the mic setup in a separate video because that's a whole different topic. But long story short, the Buttklicker enhances the low end of the in-ear mix. It goes through the Fischeramps drum in-ear amp version 1. Pretty old, but works like a charm. Electronics, real quick. I do have the SPD One Percussion by Roland for sounds like cowbell or a clap, so electronic or acoustic percussion sounds. And I do have the RT MicS set up on the side snare, which does two things: mic it as well as trigger it. So I can layer the two sounds, I can record them in two different tracks. I have all the flexibility. I can change the samples that are on there, mostly because this snare is tuned really, really low. Instead of tuning it up or changing the head or the actual snare, I just use an electronic sample that is triggered by the low-end snare, so I can choose between the two after the fact or for that very song, which is kind of cool. Drumheads. Disclaimer, I do work for D'Addario, which is the company that makes Evans heads, Promark Sticks and Puresound Snarewires. I've been playing Evans for 10 plus years, or even longer, I guess. No, let me just think. 20, almost 20 years now. Been working for the company for 3, so they have been my go-to drumheads a lot longer. So I basically found them when I got DW because I wasn't satisfied with the sounds that the stock heads got me. And for what I do, I always found more options and more suitable ways to get that sound with Evans. But again, sound is very subjective, and there's a lot of great brands out there that do their thing and that have fans themselves. So currently I've been using UV2s on snare and toms a lot because I just love the way they sound, the way they feel, the way they tune, and the longevity of the coating is exceptional. Believe it or not, the marks that you can see on the drumheads are from colored sticks. I do play fire grain sticks by Promark occasionally, not always, but occasionally. I could wipe this off with a cloth and some water, but these are not actually chippings in the coating. And the drum heads on the snare and these two toms I had on there for, I'm kind of embarrassed to say because usually I change my heads more often, but I had them on there for 1.5 years almost. These are the first tom heads I got after UV2 came out in 2019. Fall of 2019, that is. So they still sound kind of great, I guess. So I didn't see the need to change them, but now, as you can see on the 16-inch, I actually did because I wanted to try the EMAD tom head, which is actually a bass drum head that works for 16-inch toms as well with steel hoops. By the way, the hoops are double-flanged steel hoops. They're not die-cast. Exception is the Dennis Chambers snare that I Forgot to mention the side snare is Dennis Chambers' signature 6.5 by 14 or 14 by 6.5, and it's all maple shell, all vintage construction as well. Has 2 throw-offs on it, which is awesome to kind of control the snare buzz, and love that because it's super flexible for live in studio. But anyhow, I have the UV EMAD head on this one as well, so it's a single ply. The UV2s, as the name says, are 2-ply, and there is a UV EMAD, also single ply, on the bass drum. Inside the bass drum is the original DW pillow as well. On other bass drums, I have the Evans EQ pad in there, which is kind of like a noise gate for the bass drum head, but the DW pillow works great, so I'm not changing that. Resos are a bit different. EC resonant on this one, Genera resonant on this one. So this one is with dampening, this one is without dampening. And lastly, on this one is the thinnest head that Evans makes for resonant, which is the resonant black, because the 10-inch tom otherwise would be a bit too dampened with the 2-ply head on top. Yeah, so that's basically it for heads. And to not make this video too long, because I'm rambling, I get into way too much detail, I think. But I love the drum kit and drums in general, so that's what I do. I keep going on. Anyhow, cymbals. As you can see, it is Sabian HHX. Again, I've been playing Sabian for 20+ years now. That is my sound, the one that I like. The HHX series in particular. I heard them way back, also with the same store that I got the DW kit from, and I got a set of 14-inch hi-hats. Actually, this crash cymbal right here as well, and a 14-inch, so 14, 18, and a 20-inch ride back then. That was the promotional kit, so the 18-inch cymbal was actually on top. Usually would have been 14, 20, but the 18-inch came in there as well as a promotion. I've switched things around a bit since then. So the oldest cymbal, still the hi-hat, 15+ years, is now my auxiliary or second hi-hat, and that is a 14-inch heavy hat. That was kind of the predecessor to the stage hats, I believe. And they're quite thick. I most often play them closed or very slightly opened, and I can use the incremental hi-hat clutch to actually do that. So I kind of can control how open or closed the hi-hat is, and then either get a chick or a very open, very heavy sound for it. It's not a remote hi-hat, it is not a drop clutch. This one is kind of more flexible for me. So another thing why I do love DW hardware, they make these little tools that are just so easy to use, and they do what they're supposed to, and the ideas behind them are great, and they're functional. They solve problems for the drummer, which is good. Left to right, I do have the 10-inch Evolution Splash, the 18-inch Evolution Crash, and the 21 Evolution Ride. So 3 Evolution cymbals. Dave Wackel worked on these with Sabian. Great series, in my opinion, for my ears. And very responsive, very detailed. You can go from very quiet to very loud really quickly, and they respond great. The sustain isn't too long, isn't too short. It's just my go-to series for a lot of stuff. The hi-hat is a bit different. It's the 15-inch Legacy series. Off the shelf, you can only get the 14-inch, I believe. 13 I'm not quite sure about, but the 15 is definitely custom order. I heard it when Sabian brought it to Music Messe in Frankfurt a couple of years back as a kind of sample to show people what's possible if you order something that's not in the catalog in a different size, for example. I love the sound. Someone bought it from right under my nose, so I had to order it and cross my fingers that it actually sounds good, or it sounds the way this one sounded. It actually did, even though it's a handmade, hand-hammered cymbal, but it is just exactly what I was looking for at the time, and I'm still looking for. It has a very subtle chick, a very subtle open sound, very precise when you play it close. And I don't mic the hi-hat because I think even with just the overheads, it can be too loud. So I like it when the hi-hat isn't too bright and too in your face, which this one isn't, and works for me. A 19-inch Explosion Crash. No, sorry, Extreme. Explosion is thicker, Extreme is thinner. This is the Extreme version in 19 inches, and 20-inch Complex Thin Crash. Series just came out last year, and the Complex one is similar in the sound profile to the Legacy one. in that it is not as loud, not as bright. It is very dark in sound. The sustain is rather short. It doesn't have this unpleasant high frequencies that I don't like personally, but also it is not as loud as I would have thought. Like on the recording, I usually have to see that it's not too quiet in comparison to the other cymbals, so you have to lean into those a bit more than the others probably, but the sound is still awesome. So I believe I covered everything from the shells to the hardware, the cymbals, what I sit on, the drumheads. Sticks don't have anything to do with the kit. As I said, I play Promark. I usually play longer 5/8, so that's this one right here is the RBH 565L for long AW Acorn wood tip. 565 is the diameter in 0.565 inches, which is the measurement that Promark uses for sticks, and also Big Firth and others do. So this one is a 5A. It's a bit longer. The taper is a bit thinner, so it is kind of reboundy, which is nice because I like that the stick isn't too top heavy. So this one is very way to the back basically. It's a bit longer because if I sit further back, I like to have that extended range. And this is basically my go-to stick. Sometimes I do prefer the Klaus Hessler signature model, which is a fire grain plus active grip model. Fire grain meaning the sticks are actually going through Bunsen burners. They are actually slightly toasted. It is not a lacquer. It is not a color that is put on there with a spray gun or whatever. It is actually the wood that is burnt. It kind of seals it, makes it more sturdy, and that is what makes them last longer. And Klaus, a German drummer, wonderful guy, check him out. He has his signature model, and this one also has active grip, which is a heat-activated lacquer that makes a stick grip, well, as the name says, actively to your hand. So if you sweat, if your hands get warm during play, you don't lose them because they stick to your hands. I do blister quite easily, and that can happen with these because the friction is just higher, so it depends what I play. If I play heavier stuff, I resort to the standard sticks. If I play lighter stuff, I do resort to these. They are also longer 5/8, and the taper is even thinner, as you can see on the top. This is, yeah, a bit thinner, like the Klaus Hessler one in comparison to this one. So they're very good for playing lighter stuff for myself. Snarewires is the last thing I didn't cover. I do use Puresound, mostly the equalizer model, which is 2 strands or 2 pairs of 8 strands with a gap in the middle. You don't lose the response on the drumhead, but it is a bit shorter. It is a bit more controlled, which I do like. It's made from steel strands. There is also brass versions, which I tried with the brass snare. There is actually a brass snare wire on here from the factory, from Sonor, which also works great. But in my opinion, the equalizer is more suitable for what I want to do in terms of snare sound with it. Same goes for the DW. It's not an equalizer, but also a Puresound from the Custom Pro series. And on here, it is again the equalizer and a Super 30 on the Tama snare that I will be showing to you guys shortly, together with the Tama Star Walnut kit. So if you do want to see that, stay tuned. I will be deconstructing this one. There will be a time-lapse video, so make sure to subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell, hit all so you don't miss any other cover that I do if you like them, and the other videos that are gonna be like kind of going through the equipment, explaining a bit of stuff, why I use it, what the sound is like, and why I chose these particular products. But also there are going to be tutorials on stick selection, hopefully soon, also on drumhead selection, going into different options that you have as a drummer. And I will be doing, you can probably see the monitor running over there with Logic showing. That is basically how I control the iMac in the other room with the audio interface on it. That's an external monitor connected. So I will be going through my recording setup in the future, and also my video setup, which is changing quite a bit. So I got a new lens. I will be getting another camera soon to get more angles, to get sharper, crisper image for you guys, and better shots, just an overall better production quality. And I also changed the backdrop. As you can see, I got some Edison style vintage bulbs, and I will be doing some more changes soon. So if you like that, subscribe, leave a comment, leave a thumbs up. If you don't, then tell me why and what I can improve upon. And until then, I will see you in the next one. Take care, guys. Bye.